The government recently cut off federal financial aid for new students at ITT Technical Institute. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and several state attorney generals sued ITT, claiming it was all a scam. It's also facing a lawsuit from the Securities and Exchange Commission for allegedly defrauding investors. So cutting off financial aid is a big problem for the for-profit college because it relies on federal grants and loans students receive as a main source of revenue. Without it, ITT decided it could no longer operate. Now millennials, single parents, veterans, and so many others are left with a degree they might not ever be able to finish with. All they have to show for their hard work is mounting student loans. For more on this, we turn to Alexis Goldstein. She's a senior policy analyst at Americans for Financial Reform. Thanks for joining us, Alexis. The Department of Education published a post detailing options for former ITT Tech students. The post outlined the two options students have. They can either apply for a discharge and get some sort of money back, or they could transfer credits to another comparable school. What should these students do in this case?
My recommendation is that everyone who was enrolled at ITT Tech or who withdrew within 120 days of the closure this week should take what's called the closed school discharge. And what that means is any federal student loans that they incurred while they were at ITT are canceled and they will never have to pay them. Any money that they paid out of pocket that wasn't a loan will be refunded. And if they have any kind of a negative credit report because maybe they defaulted on one of their loans to ITT Tech, those negative credit reporting will also be erased from their credit report. So those are the three things that happen, and that's my recommendation. The main reason I recommend that is because there are so few schools that actually will accept ITT credits in the first place, and most of the schools that do accept the credits are other schools that are usually for-profit colleges that are also under investigation, many of them by various agencies that have some quality problems. And so I really think that students are better off just starting over, getting their money refunded and their loans canceled.
Okay, you brought me to my next questions. Are they even comparable to ITT Tech, and are they worth it? Okay, so how should students go about getting their debt canceled?
So they basically just need to call up their servicer, their student loan servicer for their federal loans. The servicer should know what a closed school discharge means. If for any reason the servicer is confused, there is a website that the Department of Education has put up. It is studentaid.gov/ITT, and on that website there is a link to the closed school discharge form. Now, in theory, the servicer will be mailing this out to all former ITT students that are eligible, but you can also get it through that website, studentaid.gov/ITT.
Okay, good to know. What about graduates who have their degree? Is it worthless at this point?
That's a really good question, and I think a lot of former students are really scratching their heads. The Department of Education hasn't given a lot of information and guidance. There's a different way that students who attended schools that broke the law can pursue debt cancellation, completely separate from the closed school discharge. It's something called borrower defense to repayment. ITT has faced, as you mentioned at the top of the program, a number of lawsuits. The Securities Exchange Commission sued them for fraud. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau sued them for predatory lending. So we don't know yet, but if the Department of Education were to release some findings of wrongdoing and illegal acts in the past, former students who have already graduated may be able to take advantage of this borrower defense to repayment law if the department can prove that ITT broke the law going back in time, say all the way to 2010. If you went to ITT in 2010, if the department releases any findings of illegal acts in that time period, they may be able to get their money back. But otherwise, it's a really good question. I think a lot of employers don't look at the ITT degree on a resume and want to hire folks, and so some people are in a really hard situation.
Yes, definitely. Now, is the Obama administration's action against ITT Tech a signal warning for other for-profit schools, and should we expect this crackdown to continue on for-profit schools?
I mean, there are certainly other for-profit schools like the Art Institute, for example, that have faced scrutiny from lawmakers and law enforcement and agencies like the Department of Education. So I do think that the Department of Education is trying to avoid another Corinthian, which was a different for-profit school that crashed more suddenly. It went bankrupt, and I think the Department of Education was caught a little bit off guard. And so I think what they're trying to do is to do some sort of preventative medicine and take some preemptive steps and say, listen, if you're a school that we have evidence or at least some investigations into whether or not you're ripping people off. We're going to make sure that you are not going to rip off more people in the future, and we're going to take steps to withdraw your federal financial aid if need be. And remember, a lot of these schools depend almost entirely on government money. There's a rule called the 90-10 rule that says that schools can take up to 90% of all the money that they take in from the federal government. So these are institutions that are basically feeding off of the government. So I do think that they're going to try to make sure that they avoid another Corinthian, that they avoid another ITT, and take some preventative steps.
Set up some protection for students as well as taxpayers.
That's right.
So like ITT, the now defunct Trump University was accused of scamming its students, and Bill Clinton was paid millions to be an honorary chancellor at a for-profit school. So given both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton's ties to for-profit schools, is there any indication which candidate would be best protected, who would better protect students who choose to go to these types of for-profit schools?
Well, I think unfortunately, at least historically, the for-profit college industry has donated to campaigns across the political spectrum. So there are a huge number of politicians in Washington who have taken money from them in the past, and it's Republicans, it's Democrats. But in terms of, I think, which candidate may be better for protecting students, one thing that concerns me that I've seen out of the Trump campaign is a pledge to completely get rid of the Department of Education. And that's a pretty drastic step that would eliminate Pell Grants, that would eliminate, the ability for folks to apply for federal financial aid. That would be a pretty drastic step, and it certainly would interfere with the ability of the Department of Education to make sure that we don't have these kind of bad actors sucking the federal financial aid from folks in the first place. So that is one thing that concerns me.
Okay, good to know. Alexis Goldstein, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Lots of great tips. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.